Hi, my name is Andrew Georgitsis. I'm from SoCal Realty and Investments. I am a real estate agent here in Southern California who not only focuses on buying and selling homes to residential, commercial, multifamily, so on and so on, but I also specialize in investment properties. And so today's topic, I want to talk about 1031 exchanges. Now, this is a very broad topic. So this is going to be part one of a two-part series kind of giving you some very basic information. And of course, as always, I highly recommend that once we decide you want to do this, we talk to a tax professional, such as a CPA, as well as a tax lawyer when it comes to 1031s. There's a lot of little intricacies, but I'm going to give you the brush strokes because most people don't know what a 1031 exchange is, if you can believe it. Maybe you're in the military and you got redeployed, and so you're like, oh, okay, we'll just use that house as a rental house, and we'll go buy another primary house in a different state, and then you got redeployed again. So now you got two houses that you're renting out, and you buy a third house. So now you've got these investments, and let's say you bought them. Just give you an example. You bought this house for or this condo or whatever for, let's just say, $500,000. Okay, and now 7 years down the road, especially in Southern California, the house is worth $1 million. Properties around here double every 6 to 7 years. So you got essentially a 500,000 capital gains. Okay, because the way it works is after all your selling costs. So of course, let's say you sold it for a million, 60,000 was selling costs, and now you're left with a million. You take your cost basis away, plus any cash you might have put in the home and all that. But let's just make it simple. Say you put in 500, your cost basis was 500,000. That's what you bought the home for. You didn't put anything in it, and you sold it after all your expenses for $1 million. You're left with a capital gains of 500,000. Well, in California, the taxes on that will aggregate about 33.3%. Aggregate. That's almost one third of that. It's 150,000 plus in taxes, which is just crazy. It's so expensive. All right. And what are those taxes? Well, depending on your tax bracket, of course, but you'd have a federal, capital gains between 15 and 20%. You would have a state between 9 and 12%. You would have a depreciation recapture of 25% if you're writing off any depreciation. You would have a 3.8% for Obamacare. So you got a lot of little taxes going into this that are all adding up to an aggregate of 33.3 or more percent. So it's quite expensive to simply sell your investment property and keep the cash. So a lot of people do a 1031. They'll take that $1 million investment and they'll flip it into another $1 million and $1. So you have to always invest the same amount plus one. I mean, it's a small little technical, but it doesn't really matter. The point is, at the end of the day, you have to buy $1 million worth of real estate uh, properties that are meant for investment. It doesn't say what, it doesn't say it has to be multifamily, it doesn't say it has to be land only. It can be a combination of land, a single family residency, a condo, as long as the primary use of the property is investment purposes, that you are renting it out and generating an income and it's ending up on your Schedule E, for a year or more. Some tax accountants will tell you too, especially when it comes to an audit. So, you know, it's not, you can eventually live in the place, but, you know, at some point, down the road you can, but you can't right away. The property's intended use is investment property. Then you can do a 1031 exchange. So basically, you take that $1 million and one, and then you reinvest it in $1 million and one of real estate. Okay. And then all that capital gains tax is deferred. Now, let's say you hang on to that property, that you bought for $1 million and now you're renting it out. And 6 years down the road, you sell that for $2 million. All right. Now you can't just take that 2 million bucks and say, well, my cost basis is a million, so therefore my tax is on a million. No, no, no. Remember, it's deferred from the first $500,000 investment. So your cost basis will be 500,000, and you sold that property for 2 million. So your new tax will be based on 1.5 million, your capital gains. So of course you won't do that. What you will do is you will 1031 exchange it again. Okay, so you 1031 exchange that $2 million property and now you're cruising along. So at no point, okay, will that deferment go away. You will eventually have to pay the capital gains tax unless one of two things happen, but call them two of two things. One of two things. If it's you and your spouse, if your spouse passes away, at that point, you re-up the cost basis to today's value. So let's say at that point, now you've got the same investment property 20 years down the road, and your spouse passes, and that property is worth 2.5 million. Well, you go from a 500,000 cost basis to a 2.5 million cost basis without paying any capital gains tax. So if you went to sold that property the next day after your spouse died for 2 million, $2.5 million, the cost basis would be $2.5 million, and you would have no property, no capital gains tax required, which would just be amazing, wouldn't it? I mean, you'd be like, wow. Of course, a similar situation, it happens in inheritance tax, which gets a little more complicated with the 14 million and all that other stuff. But the general idea would be, if you pass that property down to your children, okay, again, the cost basis resets at today's value. So your kid who inherits that property you've been holding for 20 years has gained $2.5 million in value. From the cost, excuse me, $2 million in value, because you got the 500,000 cost basis. It's worth $2.5 million today, so it's a $2 million cost tax deferment. So you would owe taxes on $2 million. Your kid owes nothing. As soon as they inherit that property, they sell the property 2.5 million. Boom, they pay no taxes on that. Now, of course, if they get a 2.5 million and they hold on to it for 5 years and it becomes 3.5 million, they will still owe capital gains on that $1 million. Cost basis 2.5, 3.5, the $1 million. And so they'll owe those capital gains unless they do a 1031 exchange. And of course, if they do a 1031 exchange, then they'll make the three, and they can go out and buy $3.5 million worth of investments, and so on and so on and so on. So I think you're getting the basic ideas of what 1031 exchange is. If you have any questions or concerns, or you want to discuss 1031, or you want to, sort of learn more about it, of course, my website is full of resources. That's www.socalrealtyandinvestments.com. You can always email me, Andrew, and that is at info at socalrealtyandinvestments.com. So SOCAL Realty, REALTY, and AND Investments, INVESTMENTS.com. And so it's all one word, SoCalRealtyAndInvestments.com, info at. Other than that, thanks for watching, and look for part 2.